You're now watching Sports Bettor's Paradise on the Bet Rivers Network.
All right, Jimmy Ott, Paul Stone, looking at college football, looking at the top games, the games that are the biggest matchups of the week. A lot of people, most of you will be watching, and I want to put a little bit of coin on it. Let's go to College Station, Texas A&M and Missouri. And boy, Missouri is, we talked about in the SEC, one of the more favorable schedules. They're 4-0, coming off of a bye. And it's going to be clearly their second toughest game of the year. They go to Alabama, but after that, man, this is it. This is their second toughest of the game. They avoid Georgia. They avoid Tennessee. They avoid Texas. And then in the secondary group, they avoid Ole Miss and LSU. Quite a favorable schedule. So Mike Elko, Mike Elko is being Mike Elko. Well, what does that mean? Well, he is no gimmicks, blocking and tackling, paying attention to the fundamentals in football. It's not real fancy, but it is winning football. So at the second time for a high-profile game since the opening week of the season, and he's much more familiar with his roster, including at quarterback also. So Texas A&M, after losing that opener against Notre Dame, has won 4 in a row, including 2 conference games away from College Station. Now they're back at College Station where they host undefeated Missouri, which has not been the most impressive. Top 10 or not? Are they deserving of that ranking? Well, they're certainly untested. They certainly gave up way more points and yards against Boston College and Vanderbilt. How good are the Missouri Tigers? A&M right now at Bet Rivers, Paul, 1.5 and 48.5.
Yeah, I mean, as you kind of touched on, Jimmy, Missouri number 9 in both major polls this week, but I still believe that the Tigers are slightly overrated after going 4-0 in September against a schedule of games that were all played at home. And that schedule to this point ranked only 143rd by Jeff Sagarin. So not a real tough schedule for the Tigers against the 2 Power 4 teams that they played, BC and Vanderbilt. The Tigers were far from invincible in those 2 games. Missouri actually trailed BC 14-3 midway through the second quarter before rallying for a 27-21 victory. And then in its last game, Missouri was taken into double overtime at home by perennial SEC bottom feeder Vanderbilt. Ended up winning that game 30-27 on a 37-yard field goal by Blake Craig. And to be fair to Vanderbilt, I think the Commodores are certainly improved. They have put up some game battles so far this year, actually beat Virginia Tech. So this is a better and improved Vanderbilt team as well under Clark Lee. But Missouri, they've kind of struggled. They really haven't looked that impressive. I don't think they've looked top 10 impressive, and they hadn't played on the road yet. So now they've got to take their show on the road for the first time all year. Got to go to Cal Field in College Station to play the Aggies. Cal Field, one of the toughest environments in the nation, in my opinion, for visiting teams. You look at the quarterback situation there at A&M, Connor Wigman, still kind of week to week, but I think they've found their quarterback in redshirt freshman Marcel Reed. He's a true dual threat guy. This is going to be his 4th straight start for the Aggies, getting better each and every week. Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia, much like Reed in that he's a dual threat type of quarterback. Pavia rushed for 84 yards a couple of weeks back against Missouri. So I think Reed's going to have some running opportunities against the Tigers there in College Station. I like Texas A&M minus 1.5 over undefeated Missouri.
I like A&M as well in this spot. And so, again, and I'm, even going back to last year, beware about those bowl wins where teams are not at full strength. Certainly, Ohio State was not at full strength when Missouri beat them in a bowl game last year. And sometimes that can catapult a team and be a little bit misleading. Missouri did a heck of a job. They had a great year last year. Drinkwitz was on the hot seat a little bit going into last year. And we talked about their favorable schedule, but also maybe those losses, especially on the defensive end, Paul, that you talked about in our summer when we talked about the win totals of Missouri and the previews, they put up goose eggs against 2 Rena wins, but after that, Inlet Vanderbilt is much improved with Diego Pavia. There's no question about that. But BC they moved the ball up and down the field, and had Castellanos not thrown some interceptions, that might have been a different outcome in Columbia as well. So those two teams certainly tested Missouri and Columbia. This is a better roster, and they're at tough Kyle Field where they're going to have 100,000 in the stands. So A&M back at home on a big stage as since the opening week. We both like the Aggies at home. Ohio State and Iowa, a little bit of a tough one here. Ohio State 20.5 and 45. Battle of tempos, to say the least. Ohio State wants to get up and down. Iowa wants to try and slow it down. But Iowa not quite as slow as they've been. And look, Iowa should be 4-0. They collapsed in the last 7 minutes of that game at home against Iowa State. So Ohio State at Michigan, Michigan State 38-7. Will Howard in that game, under 8 yards attempt, 2 TDs, 1 interception. I still think he's trying to get comfortable with his supporting cast, with his surroundings. That thing's not clicking on all cylinders just yet. Iowa coming off a bye. This is not an official play, but as far as a lean, don't be too shocked if Iowa and Kirk Ferentz muddies this one up and hangs around a little bit this one, especially coming off of a bye, Paul.
Yeah, this is going to be by far Ohio State's toughest test to date. They've played 4 outclassed opponents in September, beat all 4 of those teams by 31 points or more. They've got, too, another thing Ohio State's got looming. They've got a pretty big game on deck that's been talked about a lot in the preseason. They'll be traveling next week to Autzen Stadium to play Oregon in one of the most anticipated regular season games of the year. So the Buckeyes could have one eye kind of tilted towards Eugene. But first things first, Iowa always plays tough defense under Kirk Ferentz. They're going to be tough and fundamental on that side of the ball. They don't appear to be revved up enough to to trade punches with Ohio State offensively, so to speak. But at the same time, they are a fundamentally sound team. They play great defense, and I'll be on the sideline on this one, but I certainly can't disagree with your lean there, perhaps towards Iowa. Could be a little bit closer than expected with Oregon on deck for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, we look at the splits, and so much of the betting public, so much of our bettors at Bet Rivers just lay those big points in these 3 or 4 touchdown spreads in college football. And I mean a mass majority. But this one, if you just beware before you lay the points with Ohio State against this Iowa team. So Ferentz, and he's not flashy, but he's had a history of just winning games and winning them ugly. Boy, 2 teams, this has to be in any matchup this year of a rematch of last year's national championship game. Of any rematch this year, this has to be the least returning starters between Washington and Michigan. The coaches are gone. All the players are gone. I think these 2 teams are closer to Rick Leach in the Warren Moon days than they are in last year's national championship game. Washington and Michigan. Michigan, well, they made the switch to the running quarterback. They're not really. They improved their passing, but they have yet to hit triple digits. They have gone from 32 to 86 yards passing in the 2 games that Origi has started. Washington, now they go to Seattle. Washington 2.5. You talk about a tough luck Friday night loser. You thought that the Virginia Tech was a tough luck loser after they sat there for about 10 minutes and tried to just overturn that game-winning Hail Mary. But how about Washington? 521 yards of offense at Piscataway, New Jersey, to just 299. They didn't turn the ball over. How did they lose? Well, 2 for 4 on 4th downs and 2 for 12 on 3rd downs. And do not give Schiano any type of edge. I mean, all the discussions of the modern day, you go for it, the chart, the analytics. Man, this guy knows how to manage a game. And if you slip up against him, he's going to make you pay. Washington at home, 2.5, 40.5. Paul, what I've talked about earlier, I just don't think that's sustainable against a good coach in Fish that, double-digit passing yardage, being so one-dimensional, that's going to catch up with him. I think it will do. Washington's not great. I think they're better than what we anticipated in all of their losses from last year. I'm leaning toward Washington minus 2.5 at home against Michigan.
Yeah, I'm with you here, Jimmy. I mean, Michigan now has to take to the road, and when you're playing a competitive team, a game team without any real threat of a passing game, that's a difficult challenge. Michigan's one of those teams in college football that didn't leave the friendly confines during the month of September, played all five of its games in September there in Ann Arbor. Only had one loss. They were really fortunate probably to get out at 4-1. That defeat being a 31-12 loss in week 2 to highly ranked Texas. But as you said, they just, even with the switch to Alex Orji, they get a little more offense because Orji is a tough physical runner, but they just don't have enough offensive threats. Most power rating systems that I look at would have Michigan outside the top 20. The two major polls, however, have Michigan at number 10. So I would tend to believe that the Wolverines are certainly vastly overrated. You look at a situation here, and I don't have any numbers in front of me, but when you have an unranked opponent favored over a ranked team, certainly that historically has been strong. I like Washington -2.5 over Michigan.
Rankings don't count for anything these days except for that. They are good for that. I love the unranked favorite over a ranked team. And guess what? 98 times out of 100, it's going to be because they're at home. That's one of the first things. But yes, this Michigan. I mean, what are they ranked for because of their their preseason ranking? I mean, look at Ole Miss at number 12 right now. But who have they beaten? Nobody. And they lose to one team with a pulse at home against Kentucky and are ranked in the top 12. So because they were preseason ranked in the top 10. Thank God we don't have to deal with those preseason rankings carrying any weight anymore. A lot of broken things in college football. That one is finally fixed. Let's move on to Nebraska and Rutgers in the Big Ten. And Nebraska at 4-1, Rutgers at 4-0. These were two of my favorite teams. I like Nebraska straight up, more wins than Oklahoma. We talked about more conference wins. I like Nebraska this year. And I noted that they had been a fashionable kind of sleeper pick in the past. But these are both two coaches now in their second and third years at the respective schools that are doing it. And nobody was on my list for the future bets like Rutgers. Over 6.5. We had that one to the moon. Now they're 2-0 in their 50-50 games against Virginia Tech and Washington. The one thing that they did, they gained the lead, and they know how to manage the game and not do anything, take unnecessary risk, and get out of there with wins, despite being outgained by 222 yards last Friday night against Washington. Nebraska 6.5, 41.5. I think Nebraska is a little bit more talented. I think Nebraska being at home is a nice advantage here. But damn it, Schiano is just geared to keep these games close. And you know what? Rule is not a guy that is going to run up the score too much on anybody. It's a tough one. This is such a tough game, but I think the 6.5 just might be a little bit too much. I talked about this line of the 7 was golden. It was a make or break with the Illinois game when I picked Illinois at Nebraska. Very similar game, very similar team in Rutgers, similar coach in Brett Bielema and Greg Schiano. All guys that are real sound coaches, nothing fancy, but know how to win football games. So, man, I like both of these teams, but I think that this one might come down to the wire. I want to wait till 7, but at 6.5, I will lean toward Rutgers.
Yeah, as you touched on, Jimmy, I mean, Rutgers off an extremely fortunate 21-18 victory over Washington this past Friday, outgained, as you indicated, by more than 200 yards. So really fortunate victory there for the Scarlet Knights. And now they travel to Nebraska, and they're facing a Cornhusker team, as you also indicated, has already lost one Big Ten game. They lost that at home to Illinois a couple of Fridays ago, so they can ill afford another loss in conference play. So I think Nebraska is going to bring their A game. But like you said, Greg Schiano, he has a way of kind of mucking things up and keeping it close and keeping it tight and just all those little things. So I don't have any great desire to get in front of Greg Schiano and Rutgers, but at the same time, I made the number 6.5 or 7, thought it was going to be in that range, and I'd be surprised if it went below 6.5. I certainly don't see it going above 7. So I think the number is going to be in that 6.5, 7 range. I think it's right where it should be. So I don't have any opinion on this Big Ten matchup there on
No,
Saturday.
it's really close. No doubt about it. So we will see, what happens there. But if you got to play it, I'm going to take with Shiano in the Rutgers Scarlet Knights in a close game in Lincoln. Not ready for to lay a big number against a solid team with Nebraska just yet. All right, let's go to, how about this one? Game day is in Berkeley, California. They'll scratch off one of their lists at the handful of locations and campuses that they have not hosted it. I've been on the campus at Cal before. I've been on the campus at Coral Gables at Miami. Not only geographically are they a little bit different, but certainly the lifestyles are as well. Miami is number 8 in the country, but the highest paid player in college football. He's performing right now. And Cam Ward, 11 yards per attempt, 18 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. Now 5-0. And they got away with one last Friday night. Got a call. There's no doubt about that. A technicality, well, I couldn't believe they took that much time, and they reversed it as well. But they're still 5-0, and Ward was really pressed. For the first time, Paul, he was in a game where the plays he made, well, they had to be made for them to give his team a chance to win. This seems like a lot of points, and it was, and so did the betting market. Yesterday alone was at 12.5. It's down to 10.5 right now. Miami at Cal, and Cal's only loss at Florida State. They should have won. They outgained them. They out-first downed them. They just settled for 3 field goals. In Florida State, there are only 2 drives. They capitalized for touchdowns. But Cal certainly should have won that one. Would this line be a little bit less if the Bears were undefeated? Perhaps so. So, Miami, after escaping, did they get the wake-up call here, or is Cal just that good in their first year in the ACC?
Yeah, for me, I'll tell you, first of all, I picked Miami to win the ACC, think they're going to make the playoff and still stand by those prognostications. But at the same time, this is not, first of all, what I would call a fundamental handicap. And by fundamental handicapping, I mean analyzing the relative strengths of the two teams and seeing how they match up personnel-wise. This is more of a situational and technical handicap from my viewpoint. I just like how this one sets up for the Golden Bears. First of all, you've got a Cal team that is off a late September bye. You've got a Miami team, on the other hand, playing for the 6th straight week. And not only is Miami playing for the 6th straight week, but they're off that game that you described, the emotional come from behind 38-34 victory over Virginia Tech. And that was a game which saw what would have been a winning final play touchdown by Virginia Tech ruled incomplete after a lengthy review by officials. So really emotional, fortunate win there for Miami. And now the Hurricanes, they have to reload the emotional tank, got to get on a plane and travel 3,000 miles cross country to Berkeley to play the Cal Golden Bears. This game is going to kick off at 7:30 p.m. Pacific, which is obviously 10:30 p.m. Eastern, which is the time zone Miami is in. So this is kind of a body clock challenge for the Hurricanes. They're kicking off 10:30, the time that their bodies are accustomed to. Also, Cal's top running back, Jimmy Ott, who rushed for over 1,300 yards last year, early in the season, hobbled a little bit by ankle injuries. Excuse me. And this gives him a little extra time to get closer to full health. They'll need Ott to perform. Cal also 12-5 against the spread as a home underdog since 2017, so they're good as a home underdog. I like Cal plus 10.5.
I like Cal as well in this spot. Yeah, it's like when I go to Las Vegas and the Matt Humans treatment. He doesn't give me any consideration for giving up 2 hours of my body clock and then running the casinos and sports books in Las Vegas. There you go. So Miami, after a real scare on Friday, in a little bit of a tough spot, man. It's a long flight from Berkeley to Cal. We'll see how the Canes, because the Canes look so good I did not see that test from Virginia Tech coming, But it does remind me of what we thought of Virginia Tech before the season, before they went into Vanderbilt and got bum rushed in the opening weekend. They played more like the team we expected this year out of Blacksburg, but they got kind of robbed in that one. So we both like Cal at home plus double digits against the U. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott here in the Sports Bettor's Paradise. The main games of the week each and every week right here on the Bet Rivers Network.